So we are going to now talk about a very important topic and a very important component of supply chain, which is warehouse management systems or warehousing. Any supply chain, as you know, is about storage, movement, storage, movement, storage, movement. Ultimately, you produce something, you store it in your factory warehouse, then you move it to a regional warehouse, again store it in that warehouse for some time, then again move it to probably a retailer, and then again kind of move it to your door of the customer. So even in case of e-commerce, warehousing is still required. Now, e-commerce throws its own challenges of warehouse management different from the industry. That is something which we will be looking at. But before we go ahead, let us start and have a look at warehousing industry per se. I don't know how many of you have an opportunity to see a warehouse as different from a godown, right? A warehouse has many modern features as compared to a godown. Typically, for example, a warehouse will have an entire area for parking of vehicles. It will have an entire area for loading, unloading. It will have one side of warehouse where vehicles will load, other side where they will unload, right? And there is a in between storage space. Depending on requirement and customers ability to invest, the warehouse size can be very big. So here I am giving an example of a warehouse which is 850,000 square feet in one size with 140 gates on each side. So this can be as large as that to it can just be a 5,000 square feet warehouse, which is a small one just to store something temporarily. But typically any organized warehouse will be in the range of 50,000 square feet or above, because it will need certain space and certain economy of scale will only work if the warehouse is large. Any large warehouse will automatically have some costs divided, fixed costs, for example, of security will not go up with the square feet of the warehouse. Yes, if you have got larger warehouse, you need more security people, but not proportionately more. If you have a CCTV, you will need more CCTVs, but not so many CCTV, more monitors, right? If you have, for example, truck parking space, then additional space of parking will improve your productivity so much. You cannot have parking of 10 trucks in a warehouse which is 5,000 square feet, for example. But in a 50,000 square feet warehouse, 20 truck parking will not be a problem. So economy of scales apply to warehouses a lot, and that reduces the unit cost of storage what you store in the warehouse. And one of the important cost of any e-commerce operation or any operation in logistics is storage cost of material. The storage cost comes from two angles. One is the inventory holding cost, which is not exactly related to warehousing directly, but if you are making something, you put working capital, you put raw material, it is produced, right? That day onwards your meter starts. The cost of that material not sold is the amount of inventory that you have blocked and the amount of money you are paying in terms of interest cost, right? So if you are storing something in warehouse, there is the inventory holding cost of the material. If the warehouse is efficient, then you can store more material, then cost per square feet or cost per cubic feet of warehouse will become less and less and less. So your storage cost component will go down by that much. But if your warehouse is inefficient and you take a lot of time in locating the material to find out from the warehouse and take it out, then your inventory hold up cost may go up. You may have to have more time required to get the material out from the warehouse. Obviously, that will affect your cost of operation, cost of inventory as well. If I know that my warehousing always takes 5 days to take out the material, I will have to produce 5 days worth of more material. So warehousing is very, very strategic for most businesses, and of course for e-commerce who work on the concept of very fast turnaround times, they cannot afford a warehouse which is inefficient. If you look at the Indian warehousing industry, it has been growing, overall warehousing. We are not talking about e-commerce warehousing alone, right? It has a CAGR of almost 10 to 16 to 18% for last whatever number of years, up to 2015-16. And we see that the total market size of warehousing is only growing mainly for industrial and agricultural both, but we are dominated from warehousing point of view more by industry than agriculture. Agriculture unfortunately in India is still not really getting so much of attention. In fact, one of the biggest e-commerce opportunities will be in agri-goods and agri-commodities that will come probably 5 years down the line. What kind of companies use warehousing? All kinds of companies, but typically people who are into box management, pharmaceutical companies, FMCG companies, companies which are into food, textiles, consumer goods, IT, electronics. These are the companies which are in what we call as organized business, industrial business, and they need very, very large warehouse space. And they also are into a material which is what is called as a light material. If you take a box of laptop, for example, right, the volume of a laptop box is way bigger than the volume of the laptop itself. Laptop is so thin, but the box is much bigger. Even now, those have become so thin, it is still a very big box. right? Once upon a time, you used to have PCs with those monitors, CRT monitors used to be a big box, right? 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, a very heavy box. Now you got LCD monitors, so obviously your volume has become lesser. But most of the material is what is called as a light material, right? Light material means it takes a lot of packing and a lot of packing space, and so a lot of air is there in the warehouse apart from the material itself. So you need more space for the same amount of warehousing. Okay, warehousing is growing obviously because as your e-commerce grows, as your commodities become more packet oriented, as they become more box oriented, warehousing keeps on growing and growing and growing. And there is this industry in India, frankly, our warehousing quality, etc., is still to improve in a very big way. So we are still having a lot of growth left as far as warehousing industry is concerned. If you look at a warehouse or a traditional warehouse versus modern warehouse, what are the parameters you will compare? Typically, any warehouse which is about kind of traditional go down type of a thing, it is something like about 12 feet high. Modern warehouses are all 20 feet and above, typically 40 to 60 feet high from ground level up to that height. Obviously, to reach that height, you've got racks of metals where the material is kept, and no human being can reach 60 feet high. So there are material handling systems like forklifts which will go up and down. All those things cost money, but then they help you to use the cubic feet. See, square feet is fixed, right, and that is where you pay money, but cubic feet is where your utilization goes up. So warehousing, lot of calculations are done on a per cubic feet basis, or what we call as a per pallet position basis. A pallet position is a fixed 6 feet by 6 feet into 4 feet kind of a cube in a way, and every warehouse defines its cost as a pallet position based cost. That is only possible, of course, you've got a palletized in a warehouse which is a racked base kind of a warehouse. Your flooring, for example, of a modern warehouse is concrete RCC, because on that a forklift which itself is about 2.5 ton to 4 ton, okay, will move. It's a very heavy thing. You cannot move it on a normal floor. The floor will kind of sink after some time. Then of course there are other things such as you have technology in terms of WMS, you've got CCTVs, you've got material handling, you've got humidity control, for example, you've got gates which will close down, you've got dust covers. So many things go into a modern warehouse. Why are they required? Because then only the quality of the material that you store will remain good. You can always store it in open if you want and wait for the rain, that's up to you, right? And then the material spoilage will, in India the spoilage of material is very, very high because of our poor practices of supply chain. Not only are we delayed, that is one thing, but we are also storing poorly inside the warehouse, and we are storing poorly within the trucks also while they are moving. So put together we do lose a lot of material to wastage, right? And idea of any warehousing will be to reduce that, and e-fulfillment warehouses included. If you look at the distribution of the warehouse, right, you will notice that Mumbai typically comes on top as far as the most attractive location for warehousing is concerned. Reason being obvious, it's a big market, it's next to JNPT, which is the port, which is where most of India's container trade for export and import happens, right? Rail connectivity, air connectivity are very good, but you will immediately see that NCR is more or less there, and in fact I will dare to say that this report probably is about 3 years old, and by now NCR probably would have crossed Mumbai in terms of its attractiveness of location. In terms of pricing, it is great. In terms of sheer market that you can approach from NCR is very, very massive. It's not only that market, but the entire northern India, eastern India, Rajasthan, big market that you can approach using NCR. But as you can see, there are so many different locations where your warehousing is required. Today they are competitively very low, like Guwahati for example, even though it is the center of the entire northeast, is not really very high on the agenda of most people to put up warehousing. Why not? Because, well, relatively speaking, the connectivity etc. are a problem, but as northeast grows, you will have Guwahati obviously improving in terms of its attractiveness. Now if I am an e-commerce company, I will have to worry about the lower part. We have more than 100 tier 2 cities and 1000 towns that are underserved. I have sellers in all these places. E-commerce sellers are, as we have talked about, are more than 100,000 for companies like Amazon who are active. There may be even more than 500,000 who are listed, right? And there are some companies who claim that we have like 10 lakh plus sellers on our board. Now all these 10 lakh sellers are not all sitting in Mumbai and Delhi. If you look at the top tier, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, right, life is over. Ahmedabad, maybe a little bit, Hyderabad and Vizag of all the places is the top quadrant, right? The second quadrant is maybe Jaipur, Baroda, Surat, and then everybody else is in the bottom quadrant. And that's not even 100 cities out there. So if I am a warehouse, if I am a e-fulfillment vendor, where do I store? In my own godown? It has its own problem, right? While it is a great idea to do drop shipment, we discussed about it a lot, correct? So many vendors spread across so many places, you will go to each and every place to pick up some material. That also is very, very difficult job to do.